Hello all, this is Danielle, and welcome back to another episode of Level Story. Here in Level Story, we pick a video game and play through it while discussing, you guessed it, the story. This season I'm playing through Banjo Kazooie, a strange choice on my part for discussing story. I realize that, but there's actually quite a bit to be said about story when it comes to this game. So today we'll be exploring two worlds, Gobi's Valley and Freezeezy Peak. So in past episodes, I have discussed Banjo and Kazooie as characters. They both fit into the basic fairy tale heroes definition. They do not go through any internal conflict whatsoever. As discussed, they learn through physical moves, taught to them by Bottles the Mole. This is a form of storytelling, although it doesn't really make up for the fact that the story is practically non-existent in this game. But today I want to touch base on our heroes and talk about why they work for a game and a fairy tale, but not to tell a good story. I will also be talking a tiny bit about game history, just a little bit, not much, trust me. I did mention in the very first episode that game history is really not what I want to focus on in this series, but with Banjo Kazooie is a very special exception, and so we are going to touch on it just a tiny bit. Because it is relevant to the story and how I want to discuss it, so let's get into it. So throughout this game, I've mentioned the difference between external and internal conflict. External conflict is seeing the Karate Kid fight his nemesis, but internal conflict is having the Karate Kid grapple with violence and when it is necessary, and seeing how it affects his own life. So with that being said, it's safe to say that Banjo and Kazooie doesn't have very fleshed out characters with these internal conflicts. They are mostly made up of one trait, and their entire being revolves around said trait. So Gruntilda is the funny witch who rhymes, Banjo is the hero, Kazooie is sarcastic, Tootie is beautiful. Ignore the phone in the background ringing if you hear that. The point I'm getting at with this is that our characters are static. They do not change at all throughout the course of the story. Rather, things change around them. So for example, when the game is over, we don't see Banjo scared by the horrors he saw in Gruntilda's lair. He's still his fun, loving self, and Kazooie's still sarcastic. The end. But now, in these two levels, we come in contact with a variety of new characters. As discussed in practically every episode, I always try to include clips of Banjo and Kazooie interacting with characters because it is the most prominent form of storytelling in this game, and even more prominent than the actual story, in fact. In previous episodes, we have discussed how Banjo Kazooie fits into the definition of a fairy tale. Many fairy tales can be found in large collections, such as those by Hans Christian Andersen, the Grimm brothers, and I would even count the Bible. What Banjo Kazooie constantly comes off as is a book of different fairy tales. So here in Gobi's Valley, we meet Gobi the camel, and this is such a neat little story being told, and is told in 3 beats. The first beat, Gobi is hot in the sun, and Banjo sets him free. In the second beat, Gobi has found shade, only to be thwarted by Banjo when Banjo uses Gobi to give water to the tree. And then the final beat has Gobi in a seemingly safe spot, when once again Banjo bashes him for a reward, and Gobi runs away to what he hopes to be a safer place. This is such a fun story that is being told, but one that you may not immediately recognize on a conscious level when playing this game. And what is equally great is that not only does Gobi return in another level of this game, but he's also in Banjo-Tooie. How neat is that? I love the callbacks, and again, that is a form of storytelling. Now, before we move on to Freezeezy Peak, I want to talk about the time period in which this game was made. So first of all, you'll see on screen the blatantly racist character in Gobi's Valley. That alone shows the age of this game, believe it or not, as most games probably could not get away with that today, and should not be able to get away with that, I should clarify. But besides the casual 90s stereotypes and racism, this game shows its age primarily because of its minimal story. Banjo Kazooie came out at a time when game design and platforming was at its peak, and so games like Mario and Donkey Kong Country and Crash Bandicoot were all super popular, and they all were following the same structure as Banjo. They were collectathons requiring minimal story and They really only had one goal: to sustain the player to continue. So for Mario, it was saving the princess. For Donkey Kong, it was saving his banana horde. This game came out in 1998, I believe, and it was still an early time in gaming. The technology was getting better and graphics were getting better, but what one could do in a video game was drastically better at the time, let's put it that way. But the story still lacked. And disregarding the Final Fantasy series, you didn't see many games with a full-fledged story because it just wasn't necessary. People weren't looking for a story to be told, they just wanted to play a fun game. But it's fair to say that naturally, as the medium improved, so did the stories being told within the medium. You may have noticed an increase in story-based games in the 2000s. Even Banjo Kazooie tries a bit harder to have a good story, though it really doesn't accomplish much. It does better than this game, but it doesn't do much. And what I'm getting at is, while I'm critiquing this game and taking points off for the lack of story, I am also very hyper aware of what types of games were being made at this time. Yes, there were a few that didn't prioritize story, or most didn't prioritize story, but again, it was a different time and gamers had different needs. Even a better example may be looking at cell phones, for example. I look at old cell phones and I think, how did people put up with this? The games are crappy, the screen is crappy, but people loved it. Why? Because that was what was great at the time. And you have to realize that Banjo Kazooie is a great game. It's just that because they were focusing so much on other elements, story just wasn't something they focused on. And like the cell phone, they didn't focus on graphics because they were focusing on giving you these new features and stuff. But now that they have those new features and they're getting better and better with them, they can give us better graphics on our phones and, just better features in general. So it happens with technology. Now, one thing I want to say before we wrap up is I want to comment a little on Freezeezy Peak and the characters we meet. So we met Boggy and his children. 3 little bears, anyone? Yeah, definitely. Fairy tale right there. And we also transform into a walrus, as we see on the screen right now. Fun little guy to explore as. The world of Freezeezy Peak is the perfect setting for a fairy tale to be told. It, could be a Christmas story. After all, we did see those creatures when the lights were hopping to the tree, so it just has a Christmas vibe to it. We also have the walrus, the bigger walrus, who is afraid of Banjo and Kazooie because, bear and bird. They're scary looking folks, what can I say? Now we're seeing Banjo return Christmas gifts to Boggy's children. Again, another little story, and it's our main characters being the heroes, we expect nothing less of them. They're always going to be our hero. It's what they do. But anyway, that is about it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching Level Story. Next episode, we will tackle Mad Monster Mansion and the dreaded Rusty Bucket Bay. Fun times, folks. This is Danielle. See you all next episode.